Welcome back, dear friends, or people who are trying to watch us or listen to us.
Stumbled like random people that went around.
We don't know who you are, but we like you anyway, just for the simple fact that you are here and watching us or listening to what we have to say. And what we have to say is that welcome to the second bonus episode of Bloody Heart of Europe, the new podcast about history in the Middle Ages in Central Europe, more specifically the Kingdom of Bohemia. Well, if you've already heard our first episode or the second episode or our first bonus episode, then you know what's what and you know what we're talking about. My name is Vašek and this is Alžběta.
Ahoj.
And we are here today to, embellish, I guess, the great story of Sigismund of Hungary, the King of Hungary.
The King of Hungary. Yeah. Well, later on, yeah, exactly. Let's not spoil what happened later on. But at this point, he's not even a king of Hungary. He's just a prince.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So this bonus episode is, it has a similar setup to our previous one in that we will try to tell more details and just more interesting stuff about the topic we've already covered in the main episode. So
maybe I'm gonna little squeeze just to make it clear. There's a little bit of inspiration from This Is History by John Jones, who does absolutely amazing podcast. If you somehow didn't hear it and you heard our podcast, you should definitely check it out. It definitely like the idea of having like the episode structured, the main episode structured the way how we have that basically happen independently, and then afterwards like we found out like, okay, Dunn does this and it's he is absolutely amazing. But he also has these bonus episodes and he's maybe a little bit more charming than us, but that's life.
That is life, Alžběta.
You have the Eastern European knockoff. Sorry.
At least we're cheap. I don't know.
I don't know too. Maybe not.
Maybe not. Who knows? This is pre-recorded quite a bit in advance. So
sorry, we couldn't even read your reactions at this point. It's all Vašek's fault. The pre-recording definitely. So.
Oh yeah, that is true. Yeah, that is true because I'm leaving for a trip and. But. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. We will take the experience of reading your comments and we will use it for our future episodes. So that's also fine.
Exactly.
For this episode,
yes.
Alžběta,
okay, let's focus.
Let's just dive right into it because the episode, if I remember correctly, is opened by a great battle.
Yeah.
Right.
Battle of Nicopolis.
Yeah, Battle of Nicopolis, which is a battle in today's Balkans, or even back then they were Balkans. And it was a huge turning point, let's say, in the struggle of Catholic, Christian crusaders or kings of that era and that religion to actually stop Turkish expansion into Europe, right?
Yeah, more specifically Ottoman Empire.
Yes.
And so I would maybe a little bit talk about Ottomans and who they were and...
that's a fantastic idea because let's reiterate that the Ottomans were a huge motivator for Sigismund and his career choices. And we are quite often talking about his incredible ambition and his vision of a Europe united against a grave external threat that has the potential to actually snuff out the flame of Christianity forever. And this huge threat that he was so afraid of, was the Ottomans. So So who are the Ottomans?
Ottomans, again, I like these like visual aids for all of you to like imagine something. So if you remember Assassin's Creed Revelations, obviously our gaming references as always. It's taking place a little bit later, but it is set in Constantinople or Istanbul, and you can get a little bit more of that feel of the culture and some of the stuff like Janissaries and stuff like that. Like you can experience
Janissaries.
Janissaries.
By the way, the important thing to note is that during the events of Assassin's Creed Revelations, Constantinople is already occupied by the Ottomans, but as the Battle of Nicopolis is happening, the Byzantine Empire, together with its capital city of Constantinople, still stands, even though it's surrounded from all sides and is basically just a rump state destined to be swallowed up sooner rather than later. But it is not Istanbul yet.
No, not yet. And actually how that happened, again, if you want some like story, a little bit more a TV show like, then head to Netflix, where it's one of those like semi-acted out documentaries that they did, and it's called Rise of Empires Ottomans, and you can get at least, if not anything, just the story, how they captured Constantinople, but also exactly got a little bit of the visuals that are more grandeur and magnificent.
Yeah. But the Ottomans, they burst onto the scene quite suddenly, right? They resemble in a way, the great conquest of the original Arabic Caliphate, or the Mongols, who just appeared from basically nowhere and took over huge swathes of territory. Where did they come from? Yeah,
I think that connection with that great Islam colonization that conquered, that happened centuries earlier, it's definitely here because it has like certain similarities where it all started at the end of 13th century. So it was like a very fresh thing that happened in like year 1299, when this guy called Osman I, they had this like a very small, tiny region in what's today's Turkey. And they just started to expand. And from that very small region, they managed to very quickly like grow and grow. And they were fast. Like in 1350, they already seized Gallipoli, which is a place that is basically like its first foothold in Europe, and they just wanted to continue. So they got to Balkans, and from the south they kept going, and it was interesting that there is a famous battle that happened in 1389. It's Battle of Kosovo. If you're from Serbia and you're listening, you probably know way more about this battle because it is very important, and it was like one of those battles, like it. I want to say decisive, even though like it wasn't like exactly clear who won, because there was like a big loss on both sides when the leaders on both sides died. But that led that son of the leaders on Ottoman side, which was called Bayezid I, he was nicknamed Thunderbolt. He became the ruler of Ottoman Empire. And the reason why he's called Thunderbolt is that he was just on it, and he was going, and he was just like, he kept getting more and more territory. So by the time when Battle of Nicopolis happened, he had Serbia, Macedonia, today's Albania, Bulgaria, parts of Greece, parts of South Romania.
But that means that, that is basically like Europe proper. Like this is on the borders of Hungary. This is basically on the borders of Austria. You're not far from Bohemia, from Germany. Yeah. So the Ottomans were very close to Western Europe, let's say. Yeah?
Exactly. It's like once they got in Romania, that was like, again, I'm using like, today's terms. But when they got to Romania, they were like very close to Hungary, and they were like pretty much on border. And Sigismund at that point, because at that point he was king of Hungary, technically, he knew like, okay, this is getting heated. Like I need to do something about it. So he went to the West, and he was like, basically like, guys, like, okay, you have all these disputes, you have schism and like all these problems, but like, can you please like turn your heads a little bit to the east and just look what's happening? Because there is this empire that is really, really expanding fast, and they are clearly capable. And that was a moment where Roman Pope, because again, we are at the time like where we have two popes. So the Roman Pope basically decided to, okay, let's have a Holy Crusade. And which meant like, okay, like they started to collecting money for this whole endeavor, and then they like send out like all these letters to like European monarchs and like European nobles to like, okay, we have this whole business about getting a holy army and together and just go to conquer Ottomans, or like at least stop them.
Stop them, yeah. I mean, when you have a threat that seems to be this existential, then slowing it down or stopping it in its tracks might be the best thing you hope for. But they did manage to assemble quite a dream team, right? Because
yes and no. It is interesting because it has been last time when there was some like proper Holy Crusade, it was like in 1272. So pretty much like 100 years earlier. And there were some crusades in between, but, no one talks about that. Like, that classic crusade, if you have the idea of, like Kingdom of Heaven, if we're talking about movies. So that was like 100 years earlier. And this time, exactly, everyone was having problems. Like France was in the middle of 100-year war. So like, when Pope said like, let's stop Ottomans, like a lot of people were like, let's do it. But when they started to actually gathering the army, they started to be like all these like great monarchs started to be a little bit like, well, actually, like I would love to go, guys, but I can't right now. Like,
I could do next week, maybe.
Like I have more pressing problems. So like, good luck to you. Like I'm like massive fan of this, but like I can't do it. And so eventually what they ended up was that obviously Sigismund, he gathered some army, and then he had this like a big army from France, which was like specifically from Burgundy. And like they had like son of Duke of Burgundy, that was the leader. Later on, he's John the Fearless. Later on, like pretty important character, but not for our story. So let's just have him as John from Burgundy. And then there were some like bunch of other knights who were a little bit like, oh yeah, crusades. We love crusading, so let's do it. Yeah. But so there were like little groups from England, but not much. There were some theories that maybe Henry Bolingbroke again was one who was part of this battle, but eventually they did like a little bit more research and were like, well, he can't be, because then he was in the wedding somewhere, so like obviously he couldn't be like at two places. So but they had quite an army. Maybe if other joined, it could be bigger, and then they would do better. Who knows? But it was still a massive amount of people. Yeah.
I mean, as we've already talked about in the main episode, the battle did turn into a catastrophe. The aim of lifting the siege of Constantinople turned out to be an absolutely impossible dream without any basis in reality. But did it, do you think, start out this way? Like, at which point was Sigismund first like, oh my God, this is not going to go well?
Well, so all these armies from the west, they met in Buda, in Hungary, in city of Buda, and exactly
future Budapest, the capital city.
And what exactly, like we mentioned this quote about like, oh yeah, the spears will, like kind of like 300 type of quote where like the spears will cover the sun and stuff like that. So that was
hold up the sky.
Yeah, hold up the sky. Yeah. So the army was coming, and based on chronicler, Sigismund was looking at it and was like, yeah, okay, this is a pretty decent army. But then pretty much next day, they already started to have problems, because Sigismund was a little bit like, okay, so I heard, that Ottomans are planning to actually attack Hungary. So if we wait here, they will get tired just by marching towards Hungary. So let's wait out and, just be patient, and it's going to be better for us. But exactly, the French guys were like, no, we want to go to battle. We want to have glory. We didn't come just to lurk with you and just to stay here with you. We want to go to battle. That's what the chroniclers say. The thing is that obviously having an army stationary at one place, it's not the best strategic thing too, because obviously you have to feed them, and one way is how to feed the army is like if you're marching and you're just taking what is on the way. So I kind of get the French too, but if you're Sigismund and if you're writing the record afterwards, you definitely want to show like, see, I wanted to wait.
I mean, the best PR guy for Sigismund has always been Sigismund himself. He knew how to turn this and spin this around. So there was this army, this Crusader Christian army full of knights and, men at arms and stuff. And I think that for some people, an image might come to mind that, there might have been few of these heavily armored Christians, but against them was this huge rabble of Turkish or Ottoman troops without any discipline, the Persian horde from the movie 300. But that's not the case at all, right? Because the Sultan had a brilliant professional army with unique unit types, basically, which did really well against the European forces.
Yeah, the numbers vary. Like there were people trying to figure out, okay, how many actually people met on this battlefield, and it's just problem that if you have people even who were part of the battle, they were famously very bad at just estimating how many people it's out there.
It was always propaganda, right? They always wanted to tell you something by whipping out a huge number or a low number.
Or sometimes the numbers were just, biblical. They love that too. They just threw 12,000 because 12 is special number and stuff like that. So, basically what we need to know is what historians agreed upon right now is that the armies were probably pretty similar when it comes to size. What was the size? Hard to tell. There are some numbers like 15,000, 20,000, let's say, but who knows? And when it comes to how the whole battle went, that is a similar situation where I know there are all these beautiful YouTube videos that I love where you have all these marching blocks and the arrows and then this happened. It's but we were talking about end of 14th century. Exactly, people struggle to even know how many people were on the battlefield.
Yeah.
So
we don't have a play-by-play by any means.
No, so we kind of know the chroniclers say that the whole thing was that they ended up on the battlefield, which was in the Nicopolis. But basically, they marched along Danube to the south. They were capturing all these cities, and they were doing pretty well. And then they ended up at Nicopolis, which is in today's Bulgaria. And they started sieging it. And, Bayezid and his Ottomans, they heard about this and they just gathered very quickly. The army arrived there kind of surprisingly very fast. So exactly this thunderbolting.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So I guess we're fighting now. And the battle is quite hilly. So the battlefield. The battlefield is quite hilly, so it wasn't. The Europeans didn't know a little bit how to work with it properly.
Yeah, it's not exactly a heavy cavalry country, right?
Yeah. And and then exactly based on the accounts. Who knows how it was for real, because exactly one of the people who was saying about this was Sigismund. But while Sigismund was doing some maneuvers, the French just decided screw this, it's taken too long, it's just a bunch of infidels, we can get them. They just charged in and split the party, which obviously absolute no strategy in it. Meanwhile, Ottomans were very strategic, professional army. Exactly, they had these two troops in it, as we even mentioned in the main episode. They were Sipahis. and they were Janissaries. And
a very famous name, especially the second one, because they eventually became like the real crack troops, with a special interest in gunpowder weapons, and they eventually wielded huge influence at the court of the Ottoman Empire. And if anyone lived back then under the delusion that the Ottoman army was in some way inferior in quality, well then Nicopolis and the Sipahis and the Janissaries quickly relieved them of their delusion.
Yeah, and for Sigismund, it was actually Serbian army, which was like one of the vassals that exactly, Ottoman Empire just captured years prior. So they attacked Sigismund, and he had to retreat. That was like the only option how to save himself, and it was a smart choice because as much as it's like it's not heroic and like you don't have your heroic death, it is a clever thing because then it ended of an absolute massacre where like 3,000 prisoners were executed, and then you also a lot of the noblemen were captured, and then they had to pay like enormous ransom. Exactly, the John from Burgundy, aka John the Fearless. They had to pay
the fearless,
not the
freeless. He was not free anymore. He was freeless. It's when we picture the scene or paint it like this, then it's quite clear why the Ottomans became something of a boogeyman for Sigismund. And this was his big break, his opportunity to really do something epic and spectacular and something his father would have been immensely proud of. Yeah. And it was a failure. Yeah. And so I kind of, once again, we've talked about in the last bonus episode that we absolutely adore Wenceslas because of his relatability, and that we can actually see why he acted and felt the way he did. And the same thing kind of begins to emerge for Sigismund, at least for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, like you can, I think like you can see the character more and more, and it's very distinct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was exactly this was like very real reminder, that was just, okay, there is a little bit more than just Europe. You sometimes need to look like what is around, and you have to act on that. You cannot just, exactly facing West.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's turn our sights away from the battlefield for a moment, because I think that it would be really nice to know what was the deal with Hungary and with the beginning of Sigismund's reign, because we always talk about him being the king of Hungary and him dealing with stuff in Hungary, but it's a bit outside the scope of our story, so we never actually zoom out there. And I think it would be really nice, exactly, for the filling in the details in the character of Sigismund to know this. So do we have any information about his rulership beginnings?
It's insane. It's absolute crazy story.
Give it to me, Elżbieta.
And unfortunately, it's complicated, and I'm going to be throwing a couple of names. So
that's inevitable. Yeah.
But first name that you need to know, it's Louis the Great, who was a king of Poland and Hungary. He was one of the great guys, right?
Yeah,
connecting those two kingdoms together. And his problem was very typical for that time. He didn't have any male heirs.
Yep.
He had only 2 daughters. And while he was still alive, he made alliance exactly with Charles IV that Sigismund would marry his older daughter, Mary. So when Charles died, he was thinking like, oh, okay, great. One of my son, he will be, king, emperor. He will be Holy Roman Emperor and King of Bohemia. And my other son, he will be King of Hungary and Poland. So
that's a huge territory.
Exactly.
I mean, that's like half of Europe under the banner of House of Luxembourg.
Yeah, but it didn't go the way how he expected, because in 1382 Louis dies. And Poland basically just says, yeah, that's very nice, but we don't agree. And they just don't like the idea that it was like, okay, like, what is this? Like, we would have some Sigismund guy that has like nothing to do with Poland. So they take his younger daughter, which was called Jadwiga. Louise's, yeah, thanks. Louise's daughter, second one, younger, which was called Jadwiga. And
that's a name that you know from the history books or from, video games and stuff.
Yeah, if you're Polish, then it's like a very, very familiar name, because they marry her to a Lithuanian duke, Vladislav II Jagiello.
Jogaila.
Jogaila?
Yeah,
it's in English.
No, I think that that Jagiello is his Slavicized name that usually before he was Jogaila or Jogaila.
Oh yeah. But basically, because of this, you have instead of Poland and Hungary, you have this union of Poland and Lithuania. But also, it means that practically Sigismund lost Poland. And it was the nobles who just came like, yeah, no, like this is what we want. This is what we want. We don't want some Sigismund.
And he was a kid when he lost it.
And yes, he was 13 years old, like when all of this was happening. So fair enough.
Yeah.
And and 2 years later, exactly. It was just like troubles were similar because I guess Hungary kind of saw like what happened in Poland and they were thinking like, yeah, wait a sec, like maybe we don't want this is Sigismund guy too. So there was another, that's when it starts to be complicated. So you have Louis the Great. He's dead. He doesn't have sons. But on that family tree, the closest male relative is Charles III of Naples.
That's in Italy, Alžbeta.
Yes, exactly.
That's very far away from Hungary.
Yeah, but it is the same dynastic. It's like Anjou dynasty, and he's part of it, and he's exactly closest. So like he's like, well, you have only daughter, but like I'm a guy, so like basically I have more right to be a king instead of this Sigismund and his wife, whatever. I don't care.
That's an excellent argument. Yeah.
So
I'm a great fan of Charles.
So Charles, Naples, Italian Charles, he just like marches into Hungary and he captures Mary and her mother.
Sigismund's wife.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Exactly. Too many names. Sigismund's wife, Mary, and her mother.
So she was the wife of the deceased king, right? And Charles just marches in and captures both of those women.
Yeah.
That's quite a power move.
Yeah. He was solid guy. And like he probably had like a good chance. He becomes a king and like it looks pretty bad at for Sigismund at that time, Wenceslas is already king and like mother of Sigismund is constantly pleading like, Wenceslas, can you do something about it? Like my son, he's really struggling in Hungary, like it's all going apart. And like Wenceslas, yeah, sure, like that's his problem. I don't care.
Yeah, classic Wenceslas.
Yeah, classic Wenceslas. And but it kind of gets, not solved, but a next step doesn't come from Wenceslas. It doesn't come from Sigismund. It actually comes from mother of Mary, Elizabeth. Yeah,
so, the wife of Louis.
Yeah,
the Great.
Yeah, so it's insane. She invites Charles. Like, hey, I need to talk about, stuff. Like, let's just discuss what's gonna happen next. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna come. And she gets him killed. She just he gets murdered.
That's some Game of Thrones shit, man.
Yeah, like one of the reports that I was reading, it's like by axe. So yeah, gruesome stuff.
I would like to, be present at the scene, not exactly to see a guy hacked to death with axes, but, where is the moment when he notices something is wrong?
Yeah.
Like, do they sit at the table and he says, well, what's the topic of the conversation? What do we want to talk about? And she just, gestures and guys with axes just run in, or what?
It's
crazy.
Like, oh, exactly. Like one of the recounts, which, it's like, it might be all made up, but it's like a nice visual. It's like that she invites him into her bedroom and it's like, it's like a secret meeting. Oh. And there was this guy that she hired like somewhere in the corner with an axe. And it's just like, wow.
What?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay.
Well, it's like, how it is. It's a cool visual.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth just decided to solve the dynastic struggle and to put her daughter back on the throne by killing
the other guy. Yeah. Well, pretty much killing the king.
Yeah. Easy. What could go wrong? Did something go wrong?
Well...
Thank you so much for watching and listening to this bonus episode. And if you want to see the rest, then, our Patreon is right there. It's Bloody Heart of Europe. You can certainly find it on Patreon, and we will absolutely appreciate whatever support you can give us. And Elżbieta, what is in the bonus episode that people can look forward to?
Definitely you can hear more about the brotherly war between Jošt and Prokop.
God, brotherly war.
Yeah, and like all the gritty details.
Yes, and also about hats.
Yeah.
There's a surprisingly, a big segment about hats. So if you're a hat enthusiast, there you go.